As you move into Salvage the Bones, one of the really interesting aspects of this novel is Esch's growing sense of physicality and her physical presence in the story, as well as her physical effect upon the young men around her. So we're going to look at that in some ways. She says that bodies tell stories. So she, kind of thinks about one's physical presence and the marks on one's bodies and how they leave a sense of the past that's there. And so just kind of to look at a few things that where she kind of develops in this sense of growing physical awareness. As the pregnancy continues, she has to urinate again and again, and so it's over and over again. The storyline is detoured while she has a moment where, like she says, "I have to pee again," and so it's interesting how her physical body works its way into the storytelling itself through that kind of simple, mundane detail, particularly of the pregnancy's development. She also, grows with a sense of her physical awareness and among the guys around her, her brothers and their friends. She notes on page 94 that life within she describes life within the trash-strewn, hard-scrabble pit where everything else is starving, fighting, or struggling, and she's one of those things that is starving, fighting, and struggling at this point as she's kind of coming to terms with the pregnancy's impact. She watches the boys when they're playing basketball on page 118, and she notes their open mouth excitement, the same faces they have when they're fucking, and so she's kind of growing in a sense of awareness of the boys and their presence and her effect upon them. She also comes kind of face to face with her emotions regarding Manny, the pain that she has when she sees Manny and his girlfriend Shalia together, and how that kind of emotion is felt physically as well as in terms of her mental life. This is on page 122. Big Henry pushes himself up off his elbows, and Manny sits down next to Shalia on the bleachers, leans over to her, rubs his sweaty shoulder into hers. She squeals and tries to jump up, but he clutches her to him. She squirms and squeals again, laughing. The sun is bearing down on me, burning, evaporating the sweat, water, and blood from me to leave my skin, my desiccated organs, my brittle bones, my raisin of a body. If I could, I would reach inside of me and pull out my heart and that tiny wet seed that will become the baby. Let them go first so the rest won't hurt so much. She's a strong sense of of physical evacuation, and this leads her to the point on earlier on 102 and 103 where she begins to kind of think through what might be possible to lose the pregnancy. To the idea to drink bleach when nobody wants what is inside you, that my options are there and they are narrow to none. So she's beginning to feel a sense of being closed off with the pregnancy, that she has no other way to go at this point in the novel. And this comes to her when she's watching China's suffering after Skeeter has given her, China, the drug to fight the parvo, and as Esch watches China suffering there, she looks at the dog and thinks that she's as bloody-mouthed as Medea, and wants to go to China and ask her, "Is this what motherhood is?" And so her physical sense of the pregnancy grows as she builds a sense of identification to all these other female presences in the story, particularly Medea, the mythic woman, and China, the pit bull, who is there. In response to this, she's troubled by Manny's view here. on pages 95 and 96. This is the bottom of 95. This is Skeeter speaking. We savages up here on the pit, even the gnats, mosquitoes so big they look like bats. Skeeter nods at me and Junior. You better watch out. Junior looked puny, but he'll sucker punch you in the neck and leave you choking. And Esch, Skeeter stands when he says it, and China circles him, sniffing in the dirt. You see how boss China is? Do you think the other girl on the pit going to be weak? I ain't saying either of them weak, man. He still hasn't looked at me. But you know China ain't as boss as she used to be. What? Skeeter's tendons are showing. Any dog give birth like that is less strong after, even if you don't think it. Take a lot out of an animal to nurse and nurture like that. It's the price of being female. Finally, Manny glances at me. It slides over me like I'm glass. Skeeter laughs. It sounds like if it's hacking its way out of him. You serious? That's when they come into their strength. They got something to protect. He glances at me too, but I feel it even after he looks away. That's power. China's licking Skeeter's hand like she licks the puppies. Skeeter pushes his head away, but she keeps at it, and he looks away from Manny. The tendons in his neck smooth, the menace leaves him. If he were a dog, his hair would flatten. To give life. Skeeter bends down to China, feels her from neck to jaw, caresses her face like he would kiss her. She flashes her tongue, is to know what's worth fighting for, and what's love. Skeeter rubs down her sides, feels her ribs. You wormed her yet, I ask? Does Manny think that of me? That I am weak? That there's a price to this body that swallows him, that pulls at him and takes him until he has nothing left? Is Manny glad because he will never have to pay it? And so it's that sense of growing awareness that's planted in Esch here, and in her contentions with Manny that, you know, pretty much go unspoken through the first half of the novel. That she finds identity with these other females here. You can also look at this novel, of course, as she's viewing Skeeter's own kind of coming of age as the novel develops. I mean, in one sense, he is becoming a man through, through the pit bulls, as he recognizes, that they have economic value. He says in page 60, them puppies, they're money. And then once the first puppy dies, he feels that he needs to get medication to fight the parvo. I can't lose no more, he says on page 67, and that sets up his going to the farmhouse to steal the drugs to give to China and the puppies through their nursing. We also see it in Skeeter's contentions with his father over China. They argue. At one point, as his father forces him to help with preparing for the hurricane, he tosses a piece of plywood and almost hits his father with it. This is on page 64. And in one other space in which he kind of shows his coming of age is that he is the first to kind of have an awareness of Esch's pregnancy. And this grows as the novel goes along, as well as, the sense of who the father is here. On page 86, this is after they've pilfered the medication. Middle of page 86, he says to her, "You ran slow yesterday." I hold the bandage close. Skeeter grabs a rusty safety pin off the sink and pins it shut. "Only in the beginning," I say. "Why?" "I don't know." The light is creeping into the bathroom like fog. Skeeter pulls his shirt back over his head, looks down at my body, to my chest, my stomach, my feet. What does he know? I shift, barely help myself from folding my arms. "Maybe you're gaining weight." "You're saying I'm fat?" I'm trying not to cry. I don't want him to know, but I can't tell him because I can't say it. I haven't said it to myself yet out loud. Just chased it around in my head since I saw the lines. "No," Skeet says. "Just growing up, maybe." The light is thick in the bathroom. It suffuses everything after he walks out. The smell of the bay going with him, leaving me in a smell like fried food that makes me turn on the water in the sink and vomit as quietly as I can. my face in the bowl. So in Esch's morning sickness here, right, Skeeta already has a sense that of the change that has occurred, and is kind of has a developing knowledge, it seems like, of her pregnancy, and also has a sense of trying to figure out how he's going to speak to her about it, maybe, as the story unwinds. And of course, in the midst of all this, we have Katrina's approach, the storm that goes before Katrina, Jose. There's a hum of Jose out in the Gulf. Down here, the air is thick and hot. Esch things on page 66. And then as Katrina finally forms and moves across Florida and into the Gulf of Mexico, Daddy will note that there's going to be money to be made after this storm. Already a sense of the storm's kind of catastrophic potential. And it's in the midst of this kind of desire to make money off it that he loses his finger while tearing down one of the outbuildings in the pit. He gets into an argument with Skeeta, and commits some actions that threaten or humiliate Skeeta here, and all the while claiming, "I'm trying to save us from the storm," Daddy will say at this point, until finally we reach the point where the end of the novel, takes shape when the storm now has a name. Like the worst, he says, she's a woman, Katrina. So the storm is approaching, and Esch is finding a way to understand her physical presence as Salvage the Bones reaches its midpoint.